In this video, we'll continue our review of different root cause analysis tools and be taking a look specifically at an Ishikawa or fishbone diagram. The specific learning objectives will be to take a look at when it's best to use a fishbone diagram, how to set up the diagram as a facilitator in advance of the meeting, and some special facilitation techniques that you can use. We'll look at a number of different visual examples of fishbone diagrams, and we'll explore some different alternatives to the classic fishbone diagram. Okay, I've cleaned up my screen a little bit, and I'm pulling up information from the Business Process Improvement Workbook. Let's answer a couple big questions right away before we take a look at the actual fishbone diagram template. Let's answer the what and when of fishbone diagrams, which technically speaking are the same as Ishikawa diagrams developed by Professor Ishikawa from the University of Tokyo quite some time ago. It's a modified affinity diagramming technique, a group categorization technique, and you can use it in a variety of situations. Anytime you have a lot of individual pieces of information and you want to visually cluster or group those individual pieces of information. Here's when I typically use a fishbone diagram. When I've got a team that has a lot of information that they need to try to manage as it relates to current state and probing for root causes, or when I've got a large team and I know that bringing that large team together without some structure to do the problem solving root cause analysis would just lead to pandemonium, or when I've got a team in which there are a couple of voices that are very loud in the group, but a lot of analytical technical expertise in the group that is more quiet. The classic introversion extroversion issue where you bring a group of people in a room and sometimes your more extroverted individuals tend to dominate the session. If I've got any of those characteristics, I'm probably going to pull out a fishbone diagram. And here's how the diagram is set up. It's typically something that's set up in advance. And we'll take a look at the classic template that's used and we'll walk you through that. But it is something that you as a facilitator tend to prepare in advance and then share some form of the completed diagram with your team and then allow them to continue to expand on the diagram first on their own, and then you bring everybody in the room together to come up with the final diagram. The diagram also has some of the helper themes that were originally developed by Ishikawa himself for either service, production, marketing and sales, or the one that I prefer, kind of a spin on this, the focus areas that we've been talking about um, in earlier videos on root cause analysis, specifically the 5 why approach. And so let's take a look at how we would set up one of these fishbone diagram templates and then facilitate a problem-solving workshop with our team using one. So we're zoomed in on a fishbone diagram right now, and I think you can see why it's called a fishbone diagram. Kind of looks like the skeleton of a fish. Here's how I fill one of these out. In advance as a team leader, I will start with my effect, or what I like to call this area is the problem statement area. This is where I am going to describe my process performance, stretch goal statement, or I'm going to describe the process problem that was in our project charter. And it's something that is measurable. It's also going to show current state, future state, either estimates or the actual values. The next area that we attack as the facilitator preparing this in advance to share with the team is to fill in these category areas. These are theme areas that we know in some way are affecting the problem that we're trying to address. Now, with the classic approach to filling one of these out, what you would do is pull up the themes that Ishikawa himself developed. And I'm going to zoom out and share those themes with you right now. So with these themes available to me as the facilitator, I would use my knowledge about what has happened or what we've collected in current state and where we need to move to in future state. And if I were, say, in a production or manufacturing environment, I'd choose any of these classic themes to go in the category areas. So if I knew that part of the issue was about measurement, I'd put that in one of the category areas. And I knew that there was a particular set of machine issues, I put that in a category area, and so on. You fill the category areas in with the themes that Ishikawa developed. And you can mix and match. If you maybe are in a hybrid environment, supply chain environment, where you've got both production and service elements, we could look through both, dropping in the appropriate themes that make sense for category area that affects our particular type of problem statement. What I would do then is I'd take those categories filled in and I'd send this partially completed fishbone diagram. And then it would be up to my team members to start to think about what was the information, observation, or causes to some of the theme areas that were already filled in the diagram. They could then bring their filled in diagram into the team meeting, or they could just bring their ideas on post-it notes, and we'll post it on the wall and have a number of observations based on the data that was collected or their experiences to the different categories that were identified for the diagram itself. What I like about it is it allows team members to work on their own. It gives them time to look through the data and their own experiences. And it creates a little bit of targeted focus so that the meeting, if you've got a larger group of people, does not become chaos and pandemonium. Here's the problem I have with this. These classic themes, and I'm going to clean this screen up just a little bit so that you can see it a little better. Almost all of these classic themes include a people component. And when you have one of these people components that you place in a category area, it's supposed to not be that you're trying to target individuals or a group. Problems in some way related to that work group, but not to necessarily the individual person. But it can be easy to slip into the trap of thinking it's just about the performance of this poorly performing process is just about a particular group. That's one issue. The bigger issue, though, is I think that the classic Ishikawa themes forget about the fact that we've got focus areas already established. You know, the goal of define and measure in many ways is to have a clear understanding of current state with some key focus areas that are the biggest drivers to the poor performance. So with these focus areas, here's what I like to do. I like to make the focus areas be each one of the categories. By doing that, I'm taking advantage of all of the analysis that has happened earlier in the project. So let me clean this up a little bit. So with a focused area based fishbone diagram, one of my category areas might be the white space that I observed at in between a particular set of steps that was big and impactful. It could be the rework loop or a series of rework loops that were creating some of our process problems. It could be a variation that we saw within a particular product family or particular customer type. It could be that at a particular work group step, it was very visual work, there were lots of lean wastes. By filling in the category areas with our focus areas, we're utilizing that information that has already been collected. And then I'll look at the classic Ishikawa themes and see if there are any others that should probably be included that are relevant to the type of process problem we're having. And, maybe we do know that there is a particular problem with the current version of a technology system, and so we put that in as a category area. Then, with that diagram in place, I have my team members first on their own take a look at filling in these values, and then we bring the whole group together as a team and fill in values. When we do, as a team, come together and share our results, what we're looking for are one of two things. We're looking for conditions that we already explored in our 5 Why video session on how to determine a root cause. Things like the dramatic head slap moment. We're looking for looping conditions. We're looking for things that as we drill down, they start to slip outside control of the organization. But with fishbone diagrams and having all of these different themes, if I see a particular cause or a particular observation that's in one bone area, I'm going to call it observation 1. And that same observation is also happening over in another bone. When I see the same observations occurring across bones, that is often a strong indication that it might be a root cause. Otherwise, we use the classic root cause determination techniques that we learned in our 5 Why video from an earlier session. Let's take a look at some completed examples of fishbone diagrams. All right, in this example, we've got our problem statement off to the right-hand side. Some of the themes that it looks like are a mix of the classic Ishikawa themes and the insight that facilitator had related to the particular process problem. And then observations that the team came up with. They can do it either ahead and then share the results in a group setting, or if you want to save a little bit of time, you just bring the team all together and you begin filling out with your observation. Let's look at another example here. All right, in this next example, we've got a problem statement off to the right. I got to say, both of these problem statements, though, I wish were written a little bit more measurable. We've talked in earlier videos about crafting out stretch goal statements in a format that is measurable. But in any case, again, classic Ishikawa themes here. What I liked about this one, though, was with each observation, then they did mini 5 Why drill downs where observation followed by drill downs further. You can incorporate other techniques like 5 Why. So detailed diagram example. All right, this one was a big diagram, but a couple of big things that I wanted to show here. Loved how they had a clearly described problem statement, target future state, measurements in current state. Their themes were color coded with observations that were in yellow. And then they used green to represent some of the future state solutions. When you're creating a fishbone diagram that not only has current state observations, the yellow cards, but also future state proposed solutions that attack those observations. This becomes a little bit more modified version of a fishbone diagram. We sometimes call it a cause and effect diagram with the addition of cards, where the cards are the post-it notes. It's called CDAC. And here's a little bit more cleaned up version of a CDAC diagram where you've got the fishbone affinity diagramming, you've got your problem and target statements, blue observation or fact cards, yellow improvement cards, and the improvements that were actually selected are placed up as standards. So there you have it, fishbone diagramming, Ishikawa diagrams, a great visual way to keep track of a lot of observations and information that teams are collecting. You prepare it in advance, you share it with your team, and then in a group problem solving session, you use many of the techniques that you learned in 5 Why to get to your eventual root cause determination.